Well, hello everyone, and welcome to MSUFCU's 2021 Financial Education Seminar Series. We appreciate you joining us this evening. We're excited to have you with us and bring our seminar series to you virtually. These presentations were created with you in mind, with the intention to give financial education on a number of relatable topics to help expand your knowledge of finances. Each event will be hosted by a member of our financial education department or one of our partners, connecting you with resources in our community. We have a number of diverse presentations planned for you this year, and you can explore and register for all of this year's events by visiting us at www.msufcu.org/events. This evening's event is being recorded, so if you would like to rewatch tonight's presentation, you're able to do so on our YouTube channel, or you can share the link with anyone who is unable to attend. We will have time after the presentation for questions through the chat feature, and this segment will not be recorded. Please feel free to hold your questions until the end, or you can submit them using the chat feature located at the bottom right portion of your screen. Please be sure to address all questions to all panelists to ensure that I receive your message. And once I have received your question, I'll then send you a reply to acknowledge that I have successfully received it. So this evening we have a fabulous guest joining us to present on conversations surrounding dementia. Allow me to introduce our host this evening, Mrs. Cassidy Covert. So Cassidy, thank you so much for being here. I'll allow you a moment to go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience, tell us a little bit about your role with the Alzheimer's Association, and then we can lead right into our presentation this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay. As she said, my name is Cassidy Covert. I'm the program coordinator with Southwest Michigan. So we are able to reach so many people throughout this pandemic, being able to do these things virtually, which is really great. So we're really getting to expand our reach and really work with new partners and meet new people through the process too. So it's been really great to work together. Through the care and support services that I provide, we do a lot of educational programming just like this. We do support groups as well and information and referrals. So if you need any information about that as well, you can share that in the chat or reach out to me as well. I will put my information in the chat, and also Lindsay has it as well. So you can always reach out to her to get connected with me. I will also share some more resources that we offer through the Alzheimer's Association at the end. So today we're going to be talking about dementia conversations. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my PowerPoint now. All right, there we go. So dementia conversations, and we're going to talk about three of um, the most difficult discussions that we commonly see our families having to have, especially in the beginning to middle stages of this disease. And that's going to be driving, doctor's visits, and legal and financial planning. So this program is designed to help you talk with your entire family, including the person with signs of dementia, about some of the challenging and often uncomfortable topics related to dementia. So these discussions may not be easy to have for you or for the person experiencing changes in functioning. There is often a fear of hurting those that we love, facing changes related to aging and dementia, and being forced to deal with difficult family dynamics in some situations. And you might want to try to wait until the time is right to have those conversations. But in reality, we know that time rarely occurs. So the sooner these discussions can take place, the better. This way, the person's wishes, the person who has dementia can also be included as much as possible. And unexpected situations can be avoided in the future. So we'd rather have these conversations early than when we are experiencing a crisis situation. So the changing needs of the person often signals that it's time to talk. We have heard from many people who tell us that some of the most difficult conversations they had with their parent or family member were about these topics here on the screen. So going to the doctor to get a diagnosis or medical care, deciding when it's necessary to stop driving, and making plans for managing finances and legal documents to be sure that the person's wishes are carried out and the cost of future care is covered. We want to keep in mind that as we talk about each of these conversations, we offer a variety of approaches. Not all of these will be appropriate for each person. So, the approach that will work best for you will involve customizing it to fit the needs and preferences of the person with symptoms in your family. So, today's program will share some tips for breaking the ice and having those difficult conversations around some of the most common issues that arrive when someone shows signs of Alzheimer's or related dementia. We'll also help plan ahead and build a care team that works and communicates well to reduce some of the stress that can accompany a disease like Alzheimer's and give you the opportunity to hear from people who are dealing with similar issues. These individuals will share how they handle these challenging conversations. Now, unfortunately, my audio doesn't work in this format, so I will just be kind of speaking over those videos. I'll just kind of transcribe what they are saying. So my words might not match up with their lips moving, but hopefully it won't be too clunky, but you'll still get all the good information. We'll also connect you with helpful resources, like I mentioned at the end, to enhance quality of life for everybody involved. So we'll talk about some resources available as well. Okay, so some people don't think of themselves as a caregiver, but you still might be noticing some changes or signs in the person you care about that are causing you concern. And often we find ourselves avoiding or talking ourselves out of difficult conversations around these issues for several reasons. Sometimes our family members say that they don't need our help, or we assume that other families who maybe are living closer are taking care of things, or we feel that we might be taking away the person's sense of independence. And we also might have family members who disagree about whether or not there's a problem. So there's a lot of different things that can kind of get us in the way of having that conversation. But what we do know is that the sooner we have those conversations, the better. So we don't want to wait for that crisis to occur before having these conversations. You can actually avoid a crisis by talking about these issues and taking action in advance. By talking early in the disease process, you'll be able to hear directly from the person with dementia about what their wishes are, and that person can still contribute and be part of the planning process. We also want to plan for finesse. We want to get used to using finesse when we have these conversations. So, despite the difficulty of having these conversations, they still need to take place to ensure the person's safety and well being. Successful conversations start with being prepared in advance. We want to develop a plan for how to use finesse in the conversation, how to introduce the topic in the way that will be gentle and minimize resistance. The use of finesse goes beyond just honesty. It involves understanding how difficult the conversation can be and talking about how best to gently position the discussion for a positive outcome. Also consider what you will do regardless of how the person responds. For example, ask the person whether they would like to want to know if you've noticed any changes in functioning. In most cases, the person will say yes, thereby allowing you to have that conversation and start that conversation process. Or they might say no, that they don't want to know what you've been noticing. So instead, you might want to try to focus on the fears that accompany these changes and how important it is to talk about the changes openly. The actual conversation about the changes you have noticed might even need to take place in a separate conversation, but at least you've started the conversation. It might also be helpful to take notes about the changes you see. So begin observing and note examples of behaviors that concern you. Take notes after you see something of concern so you can accurately talk about what you've noticed, especially if this is later on when you do actually get to the doctor. Having those notes can give you a really nice record of what's been going on in the past. It can be really helpful. I know when I go to the doctor, I forget half the things I want to talk about, so recording those ahead of time can be super helpful. So we want to write things down so we don't forget those important points that we want to cover. And bring those notes with you when you have the conversation with that individual, or again, like I said, later on when you are visiting with a doctor. You want to be prepared to talk about your own feelings and use I statements. And try to avoid suggestion of blame or criticism of the person so that they are less likely to get defensive and angry. You also want to be gentle in your discussion, keeping the person's feeling in mind. And you want to avoid having the person with the changes feeling ganged up on. So, kind of again, think about how you're going to finesse that approach. It can be helpful to practice in advance as well. So, rehearsing talking about sensitive topics with other family members or even close friends can help you feel more comfortable when you have the actual conversation with the person who is experiencing the symptoms. This can also help you consider possible solutions to offer during the conversation. So, this might help, the person you're rehearsing with can maybe give you some possible things that they might say when you start to have this conversation, so you can prepare those responses ahead of time. And then you want to make sure that we're initiating the conversation at a place and time when the person is relaxed, well rested, and comfortable. We want to make sure that we're sitting close to the person, and use empathy and speak from your heart about your concerns. Of course, this pandemic over the past 18 or so months has made it hard to be in the same room with some people. So, we want to take those things into consideration too. So, might not be able to sit in the same room. We might have to do things over the phone. So keeping things like that in mind as well. Okay. So when someone in your life exhibits changes in thinking or behavior, it is important to be aware that they could be signs of Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. There are changes that are typical of aging, such as taking a longer time to remember names or needing a reminder about how to use the remote control, but you may start to notice issues that go beyond typical aging, like that the individual is getting lost in familiar places or withdrawing at social functions, asking the same question over and over again, or forgetting recent events. People with dementia typically first recognize signs that have to do with forgetting how to do things that they used to do with ease, such as managing money or remembering appointments. Conversations can go more smoothly if references made to these changes that they recognize rather than ones that the person has not noticed in themselves. Sometimes the person may be reluctant, fearful, or angry when you try to ask them to seek help. This can be because of the feelings about the disease or because the effects of the disease itself. So we kind of lose that ability to self regulate. It can also reflect cultural traditions, beliefs, or stigma about the disease that still exists. But we have some tips and tools that can help you get the individual to the doctor. And it can feel awkward to approach someone about these changes that you've noticed, but many times the person has already noticed these changes in themselves and has the same concern. So the person might be afraid or even in denial, which is one of the most basic ways that we have to protect ourselves from feeling overwhelmed. But the changes might be due to something other than Alzheimer's, and acknowledging this can help the person agree to take action. Okay, so we are going to go into our first video and we're going to hear from Donna about the importance of having the conversation. Okay, and she says, I think we have to be honest. I think the important thing is to get the loved one to the doctor. I think we just need to be candid and honest about what we were trying to do because we were trying to understand what we're up against. I think it's just so important because you can't battle something when you don't know what it is you are battling. It might not have been Alzheimer's. It could have been depression. It could have been so many other things. And guess what? There are things that you can do to treat those other issues as well. Having those honest conversations is what you need to do because you can't ignore it. It's not something that'll just go away. Okay. Exactly. Like we said, it might not even be Alzheimer's. So acknowledging that is something that can be helpful in getting the person to the doctor. There are many treatments available that can help the person, whether the diagnosis is Alzheimer's or something different, but the person can't receive any treatment at all until they're seen by a doctor. So, although we don't have a way to cure, prevent, or slow this disease, we do have ways that we can treat the symptoms of the disease. Or if it's not Alzheimer's at all, there might be a treatment that can help with those symptoms as well. So, you can be honest with the person with the symptoms about the fact that medical determination is needed in order to make and receive the best care. So, suggesting a doctor's visit can be all that is needed to get the ball rolling. Other times, it's just being honest and direct. Sometimes just being honest and direct isn't enough, and the person needs more support or direction. So, here are some ideas that can help. First, we want to use words that are most comfortable to the person. So be aware that the person may be sensitive to particular words such as Alzheimer's. For example, you could say, let's talk with the doctor about the fact that you're having more trouble doing some things you used to do, rather than saying, we need to have you see a doctor to do an assessment for Alzheimer's disease, which can sound a little bit more blunt and, to the point. So again, using that finesse. You also want to let the person know that it's time for their annual wellness visit. The annual wellness visit, which has been offered for no charge by Medicare, is a visit for developing or updating personalized prevention plan that can help prevent disease and disability. It includes an examination of the patient's cognitive and behavioral changes that may indicate a form of dementia like Alzheimer's disease. And many older adults haven't even heard of this benefit, so it'd be a really nice new thing to offer. But taking advantage of it can often be a way to get a person's cognition evaluated. So it can be a very helpful tool. You can also try to pair going to the doctor's office with an enjoyable outing. So you might want to suggest going to see the doctor and then doing something enjoyable afterwards, like having lunch at their favorite spot, or maybe going to visit a good friend or a grandkid or something like that. Also, invite family to communicate concerns and questions to the doctor as well. So, whether you're able to be there for the appointment or not, you can prepare a list of your concerns and questions and provide that information to the doctor before the appointment. Again, that's when, listing all those things can be very helpful later on. We do want to keep in mind that because of doctor patient confidentiality and protections under HIPAA regulations, the doctor will not be able to speak with you about their patient without a signed release. If you or your family member agrees to it, it can be very helpful to get a signed release of information that would allow the doctor to communicate directly with you, and the release can be signed right at the doctor's office. And then, if the individual is still reluctant, we can try using a therapeutic fib, or I've also heard it called a loving lie. And there may be times when the person with the symptoms is extremely reluctant to see a doctor, regardless of your attempts to use reason. But with Alzheimer's, people often experience a reduced ability to use good judgment and make good decisions. And sometimes this can contribute to the person's reluctance to go see a doctor. So, in these situations, the person's safety and care comes first. And you want to utilize this technique, again called the therapeutic fib or a loving lie, to get the person to visit the physician's office. To get someone to see a doctor, some family members or friends tell the person that the doctor's visit is required by an insurance company or by the doctor in order to authorize prescription refills. I know for me, I've had to go either yearly or twice a year at least to get my prescriptions refilled. So that's that's something that could be true anyway. And or that they might have to see the doctor to renew a policy through insurance. And sometimes invoking this outside authority can help the visit seem less like a criticism of the person and their current level of functioning so that resistance can be reduced, if you're just going in for a policy rather than for a checkup. Okay, so now we're going to move into driving. So, as we've heard from others, having conversations about driving is one of the most difficult conversations for families that they need to have after the diagnosis. And you may notice signs that your family member's driving has changed, such as accidents or tickets for moving violations, or things that are even more subtle, like new scrapes on the car or garage. You may have even seen the person make mistakes while you were in the car with them. Even though many of us will need to stop driving at some point, people are often reluctant to consider the issue because they are afraid to relinquish their independence. Denial that anything is wrong can allow dangerous situations to continue, but dealing with the issue early on can help ease the transition. So, next, we're going to hear from Chris to tell us about how this happened to his family. There is no exact answer on when to stop driving. You can tell when coming up to an intersection, for example, the ability to understand what is going on around them starts to deteriorate a little bit. Or being on the highway with cars on both sides becomes a little bit more difficult. But first and foremost, the safety of everybody in the car as well as other drivers on the road is what you want to think about. You want to make sure that you're not putting anybody in danger. But then the difficult part is having to tell your dad, who you love and you know he loves driving and is used to doing it, that he can no longer do that. Even then, taking the keys away full time was very difficult. The doctor is very helpful and just saying enigmatically that you can't do this anymore. Even so, my mother had the hardest time with this because she knew how much it was going to hurt him as well. This was one of the first things that we had to deal with as a family when it came to telling my dad that he had to stop doing something because of the disease, and he had to stop doing something that meant a lot to him. Okay. So there's no single moment, like Chris said, when the decision to stop driving should be made. And you can incorporate the person's doctor or other professionals to let the person know it's time to stop driving. Whether the changes in driving are due to Alzheimer's or not, here are some ideas that people have found helpful when discussing the sensitive topic. So first, we want to plan ahead before the accident occurs. Before changes in the ability to drive are seen, talk about the fact that the person will need to stop driving at some point. Many families find it helpful to have an open discussion and develop an agreement about how the person would like uh, would like you to recognize that it's time to stop driving, such as noticing more mistakes on the road or those new scrapes on the car. When the time comes, the person may not remember the conversation, so it can be helpful to write notes about your agreement to use later or ask them to sign a driving contract, which we actually have one of those that we can share with you if you need it. You can also express concerns about specific changes you've noticed. So let the person know that you care about and support them, and reinforce that as the reason for your concern, and use specific examples to show that these are real problems, such as last week you did something really different. Here's what happened that concerned me. And also appeal to the person's sense of responsibility and concern for others. So, like Chris said, we want to make sure that, you know, we are thinking first and foremost about the safety of the driver and the other people on the road. So, for example, you could say, I know you wouldn't want an accident to happen or for you or someone else to get hurt. So, really appealing to that sense of responsibility and concern for others. Okay, so we have Sheila, and she is also going to talk about how they dealt with the issue of driving with her father. And she says some tips on having the conversation are pointing out, especially for my father, the potential dangers to others that it might cause if he's behind the wheel. Also, just talking about it from the standpoint that this is not only the best thing for you, but it's also the best thing for others around you. And offering alternatives, saying these are some of the alternatives and having a plan and making sure that that plan is going to happen. For example, if mom can't take you, then Uncle Tom will take you. We are going to make sure that you are still getting out of the house and doing things. So, presenting the bad news, but also presenting the plan. And for my father, it was really important to have the plan. Okay. So, like Sheila really stressed, having that plan for alternate transportation. Um, so, it really helps to have that plan in place and lets the person know that and letting the person know that the arrangements have been made to allow them to continue to go places and be involved with others. So, establishing that plan for alternate transportation in advance, we want to be sure to include transportation to places that will help the person maintain social connections and hobbies, such as going to the store, appointments, bridge club, or church, or whatever other clubs or organizations that they're involved in. And when you talk to the person, provide reassurance that you want to help them maintain their active lifestyle and that those needs have been included in part of the plan. I think this is part of this conversation that a lot of people forget about or think, oh, we'll deal with this later. But really letting that person know that yes, it's time to stop driving, but here's what we'll have in place when that happens, so they know that they still get to have their independence is really, really important. And then, of course, incorporate the voice of an esteemed professional and have empathy. So, like Chris discussed in his video, you can ask a physician to write a letter or prescription stating that the person must not drive. Also, use empathy in your conversation and think about ways to foresee and minimize the person's sense of loss. Consider talking about this from the standpoint of retiring from driving rather than giving something up. Okay, so we're going to hear from Wendy as well, and she's going to talk more about using empathy when having this conversation. When talking to somebody about stopping driving, I think it's important to understand that it's tied to someone's independence more so than most things. And so by saying you can't do this anymore, it's like ripping away their independence. And that doesn't feel good for anybody. I know I've always tried to put myself in their situation. What would I think if somebody was saying this to me? Somebody said, you don't get to do this anymore. And how would I feel? And how would I want someone to talk to me about this? I think sometimes too many people try to approach this as very punitive and saying, I'm doing what's right for you. Why don't you understand? Without really turning the tables and putting themselves in that position and understanding how helpless it feels to take those things away. It's important to be thoughtful about what that experience is like for the individual. Okay. So, like Wendy said, driving is tied to the person's independence, and taking that away often feels like a big loss for the person. Thinking about what the experience is like for the person and using, again, that empathy in your conversation helps make the conversation feel less punitive, like Wendy was saying, to the person that is experiencing the symptoms. It's important to respect the person's sense of independence while helping them understand that you are concerned that these issues need to be discussed and addressed together. So, transitioning to our next phase, one of the ways that we also provide ourselves with choices that maintain our independence is by making those legal and financial plans for our future. Many families do this only to be taken by surprise when dementia enters the picture. So, as medical and long term care costs in the US rise, families may need to step in and provide both care um, and help with the person's finances. So we're going to hear from Chris again, and he's going to talk about how his family dealt with the financial cost of Alzheimer's. Financially, this disease will increase the cost of living. It's just a fact. So planning for those extra costs is that much more important than what you were planning for before. So when you have to review everything that's in place and see what changes need to be made, both legally and financially, and you'll have to monitor that going forward on an ongoing basis too. So as we heard from Chris, changes in plans will need to be made and monitored on an ongoing basis. It is always good to review existing documents to make sure they are current, but once there's an Alzheimer's or another dementia diagnosis, plans that were put in place years before might need to change. And care partners also need to update their forms since the person with dementia may have been named as power of attorney prior to their diagnosis. So, um, if my grandmother had named my grandfather to be her power of attorney, but now my grandfather has a diagnosis of dementia, she would have to change her documents too. So it's not just the person with the disease that we have to look into. Oops, sorry, went one too fast. Some people may have plans in place, but may still feel uncomfortable discussing their financial status with you. That can be definitely, we see a lot of changes in roles when adult children have to step in a little bit more, especially. Um, you may also feel reluctant to do anything that might come across as intrusive. But we want to make sure that we're still talking about it. Making legal and financial plans early ensures that the person's preferences are included in the plans and that the family will not need to make rash decisions. Again, we want to avoid that crisis. So it's important to take the time to have these conversations, and it can be scary, but it is necessary. And in the next video, Julie's going to tell us about how she talks with her friends who ask her about having this kind of discussion and how she really approached it in her own family. Here's what I've come to understand. After all of this, the most important, loving, and kind thing you can do for them is to be honest with them and to say, this is really scary. It's a really scary thing. And I feel a lot of discomfort bringing this up to you. But I tell them, if I'm going to be the one who's going to take you on this journey, then you have to tell them, I'm going to be here on this journey with you. And there are things that we have to do to get this in place. We are going to go on this journey together. I told you I'm going to be here with you till the end. So let's get things ready. It's like we're going on an ocean ship and we've got to get things all packed up. We've got to get everything figured out, such as what we're taking with us, and we've just got to get everything ready. A few things we have to do are to make sure that we know which doctors you're going to be using. I need to get these forms signed so that if you have an accident, they have, and maybe they have to do surgery, for example, I have to have this durable power of attorney for you already worked out. Then, if for some reason you need to go to rehab after surgery, I have to have these documents here for all the financial stuff so I can get things taken care of for you while all this is going on. I don't want to have anything get in the way of us being able to progress and keep doing this. I said it seems hard because it's hard in our heads. You know, everybody's heard or read about people who've stolen from the elderly or who have done horrible things. But if you are the person who's approaching this with loving kindness and compassion, and you are willing to take this person on a journey, you're not doing a bad thing. You're doing the right thing. And by talking to them about it, and you approach it from the standpoint of, I'm here for you, I'm doing this for you, and we're doing this together, and I'm going to help you through this. And these are the tools that I need to make sure that we can do this together. Okay, so again, talking about these sensitive issues is a kind thing to do with somebody with dementia. Our fears about how the conversation will be perceived may keep us from taking this important step. So we want to approach the conversation from the standpoint of being with the person throughout the course of the disease and needing these documents in place to help them get the best care possible. So we want to begin by explaining that we are in this together, just like Julie said. These discussions may seem to go against some of our social norms and represents a shift in family roles. Understand that having this conversation will help you and the person with dementia make plans you'll need to get the best care and will allow you to connect and enjoy your time together in the future. It can be tremendously reassuring to let the person know that you'll be a part of the process now and in the future. This way, the person you love can feel that you are on the same team. You want to start by asking questions and gathering documents. So think of the conversation as a chance to ask questions rather than tell the person something. So start by asking what documents are in place now and where should they be kept? Who even has copies of the documents and who should have copies? Who should review these documents? Should that be family that is involved or professionals like a financial advisor or an elder law attorney? And should we pull these documents together and get the ones that need to be completed um, or even altered? You know, which ones need to be altered and who do we need to take those to? So explain that these are standard plans that need to be made as we get older. So this just isn't about them. This is something that everybody needs to do. We all need to do this. And if you don't have them in place, maybe you can all do it together. So reduce resistance to the process by explaining that having these discussions and completing these documents are things that we all have to do as we age. And even as our life circumstances change, we have to update those as we go along too. And also think about breaking the conversation into parts and try at different times and locations. So if you've only had one conversation via phone, maybe try it in person if you can. You can also write a letter to get the conversation started if that feels more comfortable. Don't feel that you have to cover everything in one sitting. It may be helpful to do the planning in smaller segments. And you know, you can address the person's finances in one day and then talk about legal documents at another time, or even break it up into smaller conversations and involve others as needed. So ask a financial advisor to help with the conversation um, about finances, or involve a brother or sister or other family member to make these decisions and to pull resources together to ensure that care can be provided and the expenses paid. It's very important to understand the financial situation so your family can help you make the best long-term care choices possible. So, just as having these difficult conversations is challenging, caring for somebody with Alzheimer's disease is also a challenge. But there are steps that you can take to make things easier for everyone involved. As our veteran caregivers will tell us, no one can do this alone. Everyone who provides care for the person is part of the team, and the care team works best when there is good communication. The first step is to begin the conversation by talking with other people on the care team. And as with any care team, your care team works best when there is an open flow of communication and when decisions are made together. You, the person with dementia, and other family members are at that center of the care team. So you're at that core. And whether family members live near or far from the person who is experiencing the symptoms, you want to make sure that everyone participates in these conversations. Next, outside of our core family care team, is going to be our medical team. So families typically look to their primary care doctor to help them with making medical plans. Other medical professionals who specialize in the area of dementia might be included to make a diagnosis, like a neurologist or a geriatrician. Once a diagnosis is made, find out who will coordinate care on an ongoing basis. Again, this is typically the primary care physician, but sometimes things are always individual. So you just want to make sure you know who your point person is. And then your care team doesn't stop there. So outside of that are going to be your peers, and peers can be a tremendous support to the core care team. And as the disease progresses and care needs increase, friends can offer much needed breaks and emotional support. You know, they can help drop off groceries or bring over dinner or things like that. Everyone who is working and a member of the care team should also contact their company's HR or employee assistance program to talk about caregiving benefits. Families can then look at and pool their resources to make decisions on how to proceed. So some people might have more benefits than others and can make decisions on, what works best and what makes the most sense for their family. And then after the workplace, we're going to look at community resources. So there are community resources where you work and live, and some are even online, just like we're doing right now. So your entire family can have access to that information and support. So we're going to dive into those community resources now. So the Alzheimer's Association provides a lot of resources, but here are a few of the key ones that I'm going to go over today. So we have our 1-800 number right at the front here, which is 800-272-3900. It's a really great resource because it truly is available 24/7, even in the middle of Christmas Day or any holiday evening in 3 o'clock in the morning. You can call that number and get connected to a master's level clinician or one of our care counselors, and they can help you talk about how to have this conversation. Or maybe if you did try and it didn't go very well, you can kind of troubleshoot things. They can help connect you to resources in your area, such as more educational programs like this or support groups, or also if you're looking for a geriatrician or transportation services, we can help with that too. Um, so that 1-800 number is really just a wealth of information and resources right at your fingertips. So it's a really important one to keep on hand. We also have our Alzheimer's Association Navigator, and that's a tool that allows families to create personalized action plan to connect you to local resources, information, and support. So if you visit our website, which is alz.org, and then /Alzheimer's Navigator, again, that's alz.org/Alzheimer's Navigator. That's just one of the many resources that the Alzheimer's Association provides people going through one of the most difficult periods of their lives. On the resource list that you see here, you'll see programs and services that the association offers. And I know we can send even more resources if anybody needs those. Feel free to get connected to us again through that 800 number or with me on upcoming education programs, support groups, and any other resources that you could use. We're happy to connect you with those. So definitely take the time to explore our website and check out the resources that are available through your local chapter office as well. So if you're trying to find the Michigan chapter, that's alz.org/GMC for Greater Michigan chapter. And begin a conversation with your family about sharing these free Alzheimer's Association resources. So we want to also remember that nobody can provide all of this care alone. And the sooner in the disease process that we have these conversations, the more smoothly the team can function to provide assistance. So, helping the person that you're concerned about begins with talking and having these difficult conversations. And again, on the slide, you can see our website address, alz.org, and our 24/7 helpline number, which again is 800-272-3900. And you can call or contact us anytime, and we're here to help you, your family, or anyone you know who's affected by Alzheimer's or another dementia. Okay, so I will take any questions now if we have any.
For sure. And I just want to say thank you so much, Cassidy, for giving the presentation this evening. I think this is really helpful and valuable information that we went over. Just it's going to help a lot of people navigate those conversations that they need to have with their loved ones and be able to approach it from a perspective of empathy and understanding, to keep in mind the loyalty to that relationship and keeping that connection open that they have with that person. Because like you said, the number one most important thing that you can do as a support system is to continue to communicate with someone about what they're going through. So I really appreciate you being here, and it's always a pleasure working with you. I'd like to let everyone know too, just a reminder, if you would like to visit the Alzheimer's Association Michigan chapter, you can go to their website by going to www.alz.org/MGLC. And for appointments to discuss resources or to answer any further questions, you can also email them at alz.org/GMC. And for more immediate assistance, as Cassidy said, you can also reach out to that 24/7 helpline at 1-800-272-3900. To explore the Alzheimer's Association education programs, if you're interested in further workshops and things like that they have available, you can go to www.alz.org/GMC and take it one step further and going to /helping you, and that's you spelled out YOU /education programs. And to find a support group near you, you can go to www.alz.org/GMC/helping you, and then just do a /support groups to find one closest to you. Just a reminder that, it takes a team and supportive group of people to help you through your struggles. So like these resources are incredibly valuable, and we suggest that you reach out to someone for support because it's going to be easier if you don't go it alone, for sure. So we're going to now stop recording, and we will open up the chat for questions. So we will be answering them in the order that we have received them this evening. And as a reminder, please be sure to address your questions to all panelists.